What if I told you that Jesus' most controversial healing hides a secret that could completely revolutionize your spiritual life? For 2,000 years, pastors, theologians, and scholars have overlooked a detail in this passage so shocking that once you discover it, you'll never view Jesus' miracles the same way again. In the next few minutes, you'll discover why Jesus chose to make mud with his spit, why he told a blind man to walk half a kilometer, and the true purpose behind this healing. This isn't just another sermon about miracles. It's the revelation of a divine pattern that can unlock impossible miracles in your life. Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover will shake your deepest convictions. Before we dive into this revelation that could change your life forever, if you're someone who doesn't settle for superficial answers, who seeks the truth behind miracles and wants access to biblical revelations that most will never discover, hit the like button right now. This shows me that you're among those few who truly want to see beyond the obvious. And subscribe to the channel, because every week I unveil biblical mysteries that can revolutionize your spiritual journey. Because when you understand what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes, you will want immediate access to the other transformative truths I share only with those truly committed to deep spiritual growth. It was an ordinary Sabbath in Jerusalem. Jesus was walking the dusty streets when something extraordinary was about to happen. But it wasn't what he would do. It was how he would do it that would perplex even the disciples. A man, blind from birth. 30, maybe 40 years begging on the same cold stones. His eyes had never seen sunlight. They had never beheld the face of his own mother. But here's what no one told you. Why did Jesus, who healed hundreds with just a word, choose to make mud on this particular day? Why did he choose to spit on the ground when he could simply touch the man's eyes? And why, listen carefully, did he send this man, still blind, to walk alone for nearly half a kilometer to a specific pool? The answer isn't just in the miracle, it's in the method. And when you understand this method, you'll discover that Jesus wasn't just healing a blind man. He was revealing the secret code of how God works impossible miracles in the lives of those who truly understand his nature. Let me tell you something that will break your heart. This man wasn't just blind, he was cursed. At least, that's what all of Jerusalem believed. In Jewish culture, birth defects were seen as divine punishment. Not for anything he did, but for the sin of his parents. Imagine carrying that mark for the rest of your life. Every day, he would crawl to that same corner, extending his empty hand to passersby who looked away. It wasn't just blindness that isolated him. It was social shame. 'Twas the constant whisper, cursed, rejected by God, fruit of sin. 30 years of hearing this. 30 years of believing he was born condemned. Then the disciples asked the question everyone wanted to ask. Rabbi, who sinned? This man or his parents, that he was born blind? It was a legitimate theological question. After all, Deuteronomy 28 lists blindness as one of the divine curses for those who disobey God. The Pharisees taught that extreme suffering was always the result of a specific sin. And here is where Jesus breaks 1,500 years of religious tradition with a single sentence. Neither this man nor his parents sinned. But it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. Do you understand what just happened? Jesus didn't say the man was healed despite his blindness. He said he was born blind to be healed. This means God allowed 30 years of darkness, 30 years of humiliation, 30 years of pain, all for a specific moment of glory. Every morning he awoke in the dark wasn't divine punishment, it was divine preparation. What if I told you the same logic applies to your impossible situation? That incurable disease, that seemingly lost marriage, that desperate financial situation, that child lost in the world. What if all of this isn't punishment, but preparation? What if God allowed this darkness not to destroy you, but to manifest his glory in a way never before seen? This man was born blind so that Jesus could reveal something about the nature of God that would only be possible through this specific healing. Your pain has a purpose. Your struggle has a destiny. Your darkness has an expiration date. Now comes the part that embarrasses even seasoned pastors. Jesus spat on the ground, but it wasn't just any spit. In Hebrew culture, spit had a specific prophetic meaning. It was used to seal contracts, to bless, and to create. When a father blessed a child, he often spat on his own hands before placing it on the child's head. It was the element that transferred essence, life, and power. Jesus wasn't just spitting casually. He was releasing his divine essence, his heavenly DNA, his creative nature onto the dusty ground of Jerusalem. And then he did something even more profound. He mixed his saliva with the dust of the earth, the same dust God used to form Adam. Do you understand the symbolism? Genesis 2-7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Jesus wasn't just making mud, he was recreating this man, cell by cell, neuron by neuron, from scratch. But here's the detail that will blow your mind. Jesus had access to the same power he used in the original creation. He could have spoken a word and instantly restored this man's sight. He did it other times. Be clean to the leper. Rise and walk to the paralytic. Lazarus, come forth to the dead man. So why did he choose such an elaborate process this time? Why the mud ritual? Why the walk? Why the specific pool? Because sometimes God wants to teach us something through the process that we would never learn through the instant result. The mud in this man's eyes wasn't just medicine, it was metamorphosis. Every second that substance remained in contact with his dead eyeballs, God was rebuilding nerve endings that never existed. He was creating neural connections that never formed. He was growing muscles that never developed. Jesus could have healed this man instantly, but he chose a process because he wanted everyone to understand. Some of God's miracles are not instantaneous, they are progressive. Some don't happen at the moment of prayer, but during the journey of obedience. Some aren't released when you're at the altar, but as you're walking toward your destiny. And maybe, just maybe, what you're experiencing now isn't the problem, it's the process. It's not the punishment, it's the preparation for the miracle being gestated in the invisible. Then Jesus does something no religious Jew would do. He touches this man's dead eyes with mud. In Mosaic law, touching a disabled person or someone considered cursed resulted in ceremonial impurity. You would have to undergo purification rituals before being allowed to enter the temple again. But Jesus didn't hesitate. He didn't use an instrument. He didn't delegate it to a disciple. With his own hands, he applied that sacred mud to the eyes that had never worked. Why? Because sometimes God needs to touch our most wounded, most ashamed, most hopeless area for his glory to be manifested. He doesn't avoid your wound. He draws near to it. He isn't disgusted by your situation. He immerses himself in it. Where you see impossibility, he sees opportunity. Where you see the end of the line, he sees the beginning of a miracle. And here, as something that can completely change your perspective on how God works. Jesus didn't just touch this man's eyes. He completely covered them with mud. For a few minutes, this man was even more blind than he was before. The mud blocked any trace of light that could possibly penetrate. Think about it. Before receiving perfect vision, he experienced absolute darkness. Sometimes God allows things to get worse before they get better. Sometimes he completely closes a door before opening the right one. Sometimes he allows you to experience absolute zero so that when the miracle comes, you know exactly where it came from. If you're going through a moment where everything seems darker than ever, where you can't see even a ray of hope, maybe you're not being punished. Maybe you're being prepared. Maybe this extra darkness isn't the problem getting worse. Maybe it's God applying the mud that precedes the miracle. Go wash in the pool of Siloam. Wait, what? This man had never seen anything in his life. How was he supposed to find a specific pool in a city of tens of thousands of people? Jerusalem at festival time had up to 500,000 inhabitants. The streets were labyrinths. There were dozens of pools, fountains, and ponds. And Jesus didn't give a GPS. He didn't draw a map. He didn't appoint a guide. He simply said, "Go." Period. And here's the detail that 99% of people miss. This man obeyed without question. Imagine yourself blind, with mud dripping down your face, being watched by hundreds of people, walking down streets you've never seen, searching for something you don't even know what it is. This isn't just obedience. It's radical faith. It's absolute trust. It's the kind of surrender God is looking for in each of us. But here's what strikes me. This man didn't ask for clarification. He didn't bargain. He didn't question logic. He simply got up and started walking. Because when you recognize God's voice, when you know you've been touched by the power of the Almighty, you don't argue. You obey. And as he walked, something was happening. Every step was an act of faith. Every meter he covered was a declaration of trust. Every stone he stumbled over was an opportunity to give up or persist. And he persisted. The walk from his house to Siloam was approximately 500 meters. For you and me, a 5-minute walk. For him, an eternity of pure faith. Because he wasn't just physically walking, Kay was moving spiritually from doubt to faith, from hopelessness to hope, from curse to blessing. But why Siloam? Kay could have sent him anywhere. He could have said, "Go home and wash your face." He could have said, "Go to the temple and offer sacrifice." But he specifically chose Siloam. Why? The word Siloam means sent. Jesus didn't choose this pool by chance. He was making a prophetic declaration. I am the sent one, and to receive my miracle, you must go to the place that represents who I am. John 8:42. Jesus said to them, "If God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and have come from God. I have not come of myself, but He sent me." Jesus is the one sent by the Father, and Siloam represents this truth. But there is another, even deeper level. Siloam was not just an ordinary pool. It was the place where the temple water was collected for purification ceremonies. It was where the priests went to draw water for sacred rituals. It was, literally, the source of Jerusalem's spiritual purification. Jesus was saying, go to the place of purification. Go to the place where the filth is removed. Go to the place where the old is washed away and the new emerges. He was sending this man to a baptism of transformation. And here's the application for your life. What is the Siloam of your situation? Oh, what is the place God is sending you to, even though you can't see the way? Maybe it's forgiving that person who deeply hurt you. Maybe it's making that difficult decision you've been avoiding. Maybe it's simply trusting when everything seems impossible. Do you know what the Siloam of many people is? It's the place of humility. It's recognizing that you don't have all the answers. It's admitting that you need God. It's stopping trying to control everything and simply obeying His voice. But remember, this man had to walk there while still blind. He wasn't given partial sight to make the path easier. He didn't have a gradual revelation. He had to exercise pure faith from beginning to end. And perhaps that's exactly what God is asking of you now. During that walk, how many times must He have thought, what if I'm being deceived? What if it's just a crazy person who spit in my face? What if when I get there, nothing happens? But he kept walking, because true faith isn't the absence of doubt. It's obedience despite doubt. And then it happened. For the first time in 30 years, light. Imagine colors he never dreamed existed. Faces he only knew by touch. The blue sky, the green grass. His own hands. The reflection of his face in the water of Siloam. But here, something that will shock you. The first face he saw clearly was un-Jesus. It was his own reflection in the water. God allowed the first image that entered his newly created eyes to be himself. Why? Because when God works a miracle in your life, He wants you to clearly see who you are after the transformation. This man looked into the water and saw someone completely different from the blind beggar. He had been for 30 years. He saw a free man, a transformed man, a man who had experienced God's creative power firsthand. And here's where the story gets even more interesting. When he returned home, no one recognized him. No one. The neighbors who saw him begging on the same corner every day looked at him and said, "Isn't this the man who used to beg?" Others said, "It's him." Others said, "No, but he looks like him." The miracle was so radical, so transformative, that even those closest to him doubted whether it was the same person. He was so different that it created a social identity crisis. People knew the blind beggar. They didn't know how to deal with the free man. And perhaps that's exactly what will happen to you. When God performs the miracle He's preparing in your life, you will be so transformed that people will have difficulty recognizing you. They knew you were broken. They don't know how to deal with you restored. Some people won't be able to handle your transformation. They will prefer you the way you were, because it was more comfortable for them. They will question whether you are really you. They will doubt the authenticity of your change. They'll find fault to justify their discomfort with His victory. But here's something powerful. This man didn't apologize for the transformation. He didn't try to diminish himself to make others feel better. When asked if he was the same beggar, he said clearly and with conviction, "It's me." Don't be afraid to fully embrace who you've become after God works in your life. Don't apologize for your healing. Don't diminish yourself because of your victory. Don't hide your miracle to make others feel comfortable with their mediocrity. Then the Pharisees stepped in. And here's where the story reveals something very disturbing about human nature. They were furious. Not because the miracle was fake, but because it was too true for their doctrines. You see, they didn't question whether the man was truly seeing. It was obvious he was. They questioned whether Jesus had the authority to do this on the Sabbath. They were more concerned with religious protocol than with the supernatural transformation. The Pharisees questioned the man. They questioned the parents. They created committees of inquiry. They called hearings, all to find a way to deny or diminish the obvious. Why? Because when God works outside the parameters of our established religion, it threatens our control. And here's a truth that may hurt, but that you need to hear. The greatest enemy of your miracle is not impossible circumstances. It's not the medical diagnosis. It's not the financial situation. It's not the destroyed relationship. The greatest enemy of your miracle is the religious people who prefer their traditions to the supernatural acts of God. Jesus broke the Sabbath to heal this man. He broke protocols. He broke expectations. He broke rules that had been followed for centuries. And when God decides to break the rules to work in your life, prepare for opposition from the saints. They will say it's not from God because it didn't follow the pattern they know. They will question the methodology. They will doubt the authenticity. They will create theologies to explain why it shouldn't have happened. But here's what impresses me about this man. He was undeterred. When the Pharisees tried to complicate his experience with elaborate theology, said something simple and powerful. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. Simple logic, obvious result. You couldn't argue with the facts. A man born blind could see perfectly. Period. There was no natural explanation. There was no magic trick. There was no medical treatment. It was supernatural. Period. And do you know what the Pharisees did with this irrefutable logic? They expelled the man from the synagogue. They cut off religious communion with him. They banished him from the city's official spiritual life. Why? Because he dared to defend the authenticity of a miracle that didn't fit into their theological box. Here's a profound truth. Sometimes receiving a miracle from God will cost you religious acceptance. Sometimes experiencing the transformative power of Jesus will result in rejection of spiritual institutions. Sometimes you will have to choose between pleasing people and honoring God. This man lost his synagogue, but he gained his sight. You lost religious approval, but gained supernatural experience. You lost tradition, but found truth. And perhaps that's exactly the trade-off God is offering you. So, Jesus sought you out again. Jesus took the initiative. He didn't wait for the man to find him. He didn't wait for him to discover where he was. Jesus knew he had been thrown out of the synagogue and went after him. Here, something beautiful about the nature of God. When religious people reject you because of what God has done in your life, God Himself comes to comfort you. When institutions close their doors, Jesus opens His heart. When men say no, He says yes. And Jesus asked the most important question in the entire narrative. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Not do you believe in miracles, not do you have faith, but do you believe in me? Because in the end, it's not just about what God can do for you, it's about who God is to you. The man replied, "Who is He? Lord, that I may believe in Him." What a beautiful question. What refreshing honesty. He didn't pretend to know. He didn't try to impress. He simply admitted that he wanted to know more deeply the one who had transformed his life. And then Jesus revealed, "You have seen Him, and it is He who speaks to you." Boom, full revelation. I am the one you seek. I am the one who touched your eyes. I am the one who sent you to Siloam. I am the one who recreated your vision. I am Jesus, the Son of Man. And the man's reaction was immediate and beautiful. "I believe, Lord, nay." And he prostrated himself before Him, not in the synagogue, not before the priests, not in a formal ceremony, but before Jesus, on the street, in public, without religious protocol. Here's something that will blow your mind. This man was the only person in the entire 9th chapter of John who truly saw who Jesus was. The disciples asked a theological question, but didn't recognize the divinity. The neighbors were confused by the miracle, but didn't worship. Parents stayed away out of fear, but didn't believe. The Pharisees investigated everything, but denied the evidence. But the one who was physically blind saw spiritually. While everyone else was focused on the implications of the miracle, he was focused on the identity of the miracle worker. While everyone else was debating theology, he was experiencing revelation. While everyone else was complicating things, he was simplifying. I believe, Lord. And here's the deepest truth of this whole narrative. Jesus didn't just heal this man's physical eyes. He opened his spiritual eyes. He didn't just restore natural sight. He granted supernatural vision. He didn't just make him see the world. He made him see God. So let me ask you, what is your blindness? What area of your life seems impossible to transform? Maybe it's a marriage that's been on the rocks for years. Maybe it's a disease doctors say has no cure. Maybe it's a financial situation that seems hopeless. Maybe it's a child who's lost his way and never seems to return. Maybe it's a deep depression that seems to have no end. Jesus is saying to you today, neither you nor your circumstances sinned, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in your life. He's making mud with your tears. He's mixing His divine essence with the dust of your broken reality. He's preparing something supernatural. He's sending you to your Siloam. He's telling you to walk by faith when you can't see the way. He's asking for radical obedience when everything seems to make no sense. And He's ready to unleash a miracle so great that even you won't recognize yourself afterward. But you need to take the blind step of faith. You need to obey even without seeing the result. You need to walk even with mud on your face. You need to trust even when religious people question you. You need to persist even when it seems like nothing is happening. Because when God decides to rewrite your story, when He decides to manifest His glory in your life, when He decides to transform your greatest weakness into His greatest demonstration of power, He doesn't just heal your blindness, He makes you see who He really is, and that changes everything. It changes how you see your problems. It changes how you deal with impossibilities. It changes how you respond to crises. It changes how you worship. It changes who you are. This man entered history as a blind, cursed beggar. He left history as a living witness to God's creative power. He began invisible and ended unforgettable. He began rejected and ended chosen. He began in darkness and ended in light. And the same transformation that happened to him 2,000 years ago can happen to you today. The same Jesus who made mud with his spit can perform miracles with his tears. The same power that opened blind eyes can open closed doors in your life. The same grace that transformed a beggar into a witness can transform your impossible situation into a powerful testimony. So stop looking at what you don't have and start looking at who you do have. Stop focusing on the size of the problem and start focusing on the size of your God. Stop questioning why this happened and start waiting for what God will do. Because He's not finished with you. In fact, He's just beginning. Your story didn't end with the chapter of pain. There are more chapters being written. And when God finishes writing, when He finishes molding, when He finishes transforming, you won't recognize yourself. And people will look at you and say, "Isn't this the same one who was broken?" And you will respond with the same conviction as that man, "It's me. But now I see." If this revelation touched your heart, if you feel God is preparing something extraordinary in your life, show it by clicking the like button. Subscribe to the channel now, because every week I bring profound biblical revelations that will accelerate your spiritual transformation. Don't miss the next truths that may be exactly what you need for your next miracle.